Hi, and welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, the podcast where a comedian talks to his yoga teacher, which I'd hope from the title was somewhat self-explanatory, but I do want to let you know what you are in for if you are unprepared. So let's start the show. I hope you enjoy it. I write some really stupid things down. Like, I wrote down an idea that I had a jar of marmalade, right? Or vice versa. So it's someone else's jar of marmalade. Okay, this is the idea. And then I go to their house and I open the jar of marmalade and I start eating all the marmalade, right? And then they come down and they're furious with me because it turns out that it wasn't a jar of marmalade after all. Is that they had a really good friend that was an orange that like had a bad accident and they managed to preserve him in this jar for when they can like reverse the accident damage or like use the DNA of it to bring it back to life again. And I've accidentally assumed that this was marmalade instead of the preserved orange friend, and I've eaten it. So
I'm not sure if that's a bit far-reaching.
But did it make any sense at all? Or
I think it fell down when the orange had to be alive.
Okay. Yeah. Unless it was like, I don't know, like unless it was a guy that got cursed so that he turned into an orange.
Okay.
And then he died.
That works better.
Okay. I mean, it works better on such a marginal level in that, like, the whole thing is still nonsense, but this is what this podcast is. It's yoga advice and the graveyard of my ideas.
I like it.
So I just got this routine at the moment where I'm writing in coffee shops, but you've got to find the right coffee shop because the thing is, if you're trying to find a specific place where you can sit and work, you need somewhere that's got a relatively large sitting space so that you don't feel bad for taking up the room for a couple of hours. And sorry, I feel like I haven't really got in the swing of the conversation yet. Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, that sounds really nice. I mean, before COVID, that's what I was doing because obviously we were working on the house as well, which is made it a very uncomfortable place to stay. And so I would go down to the cafe at the Abbey. The only problem with that one is it's really big and it's great, but it has no internet, or at least it didn't then. I don't know if it does now. I
don't need the internet because I work on a pad. And then I type the stuff up later after. Oh,
so you work in a notebook?
Yeah, I got a notebook, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Old school, mate. Old school. Like they did in biblical times. It's, just a biro.
You got...
you know.
I was imagining you with like a little chisel and on a piece of stone.
It must have been a nightmare, wasn't it? Like working on pieces of stone when you're like... when you're drafting. It must be awful, you know.
Well, they did have paper. It just didn't last.
Right. Oh, so there's a final draft is on the stone, is it then?
Yeah.
You think, okay,
that's
that
it.
makes a bit more sense, doesn't it? So
it's like,
you go round to someone's, some writer's house, and the bin is just full of like slates, and
like,
instead of scrunching up a piece of
block,
paper, it's just like get a big sledgehammer and smash it up.
That sounds like it would be quite cathartic. So
yeah, it could be. Yeah.
I think that sounds quite good, really. I quite like that idea. It was Mental Health Awareness Week. When was that? Like the second week of May?
Right.
And I did a yoga and meditation class for that, which I wasn't expecting you to love because I know you meditate all the time anyway. You're like you're half meditating right now, aren't you?
It was just a regular yawn.
Yeah.
What did you want to talk about that then?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I quite enjoyed that one. That was quite nice because I tend not to go so slow in my classes. I mean, when I teach at a studio, I seem to realize that I end up being the teacher that teaches the hardest classes. And I don't know how that's happened because I don't feel like I'm teaching a hard class.
It's because you're mean, that's why it is.
It must be because I'm mean.
You like people to suffer. Because you laugh when you know, when we do leg lifts and have to, you know, have our feet in the air and then lower them.
I do a little evil laugh.
And you laugh like when you take a longer pause over when you get to like 3, counting down from 10, and then say like 2.5 or something, and then you start laughing. And I thought, it's like, but I mean, that's so unfair because that I've timed the speed of my legs going down in accordance to what the count from 10 to 0 is. So if you put like a 2.5 in, it fucks up the...
It means you're stuck really low. I know, that's the point.
Yeah, well, I'm not...
You can always ignore me and do what you want.
I frankly will.
But yeah, so going against my nature of being a bit of a more hardcore teacher. I'm not a rockets teacher or anything like that, but being a bit harder in my classes. I did that yoga meditation. It was really chill and quite nice, and everyone was like, "Ooh, Kayla, I feel so relaxed now." And then afterwards, because the focus this year on Mental Health Awareness Week was loneliness, so I planned to do like 20 minutes after class. Anybody could join after, or they could stay or leave, and we just talked. Just to see how everyone's doing, anything to say, got to catch up with people. I haven't really, because if you kind of rush to class sometimes and you don't stick around after, you don't really get a chance to catch up. So it's just like, put in 20 minutes, we'll have a catch up. We stayed on for over an hour. And in the end, I had to go like, oh, guys, I'm really sorry, but I need lunch. I need to eat. And it was really nice.
Well, I feel a little bit jealous because, what if you start thinking that would be a better podcast with the other...
No,
rivals now.
I don't know.
So.
A lot of people enjoy the podcast, so
thanks.
It's been quite nice. I think.
Yes.
No, I mean in general, just like the quality of what we're putting out, I think has been quite good. So, what did you think of class last night?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah,
the balance one.
Yeah, I did think it was okay.
Just all right. Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Sorry, that's high praise from me. That is. So the balancing class focus, why did you do a balancing focus class and why is it important to balance? And not in terms of, because obviously like one thing that I thought, I'm definitely much more balanced in terms of, not mentally balanced, although I am mentally balanced. I mean, to some extent.
Because we're super zen,
yeah,
right?
super zen, yeah, obviously. Like,
no, but what you mean is physically balancing,
So yesterday, on Monday night, I was at a gig and I was doing... Like, I was waiting, the last act on a new material night. It's so annoying. I had to wait ages, watch loads of, not shit, but like, just, I just had to wait. And so at one point I was sat at the back of the room and I was doing a figure 4 chair pose,
nice.
like at the back of the room. And one of the other acts looked at me and I could see his face and he was sort of thinking, what the fuck are you doing? But I just thought it was actually really easy because thinking back to when I first started, I used to be quite bad at balances in class. I mean, part of it is a mental thing, I suppose, but it also, isn't it the muscles in your foot, don't they sort of somehow get stronger so that you are able to balance more so? Or, I mean, you should tell me really because you're the professional at this, but there's a thing like,
I'm the professional balancer.
Well, no, but like you're like you're the anatomy queen, aren't you? So.
Oh, thanks.
Well, that's what it says in your profile, that you focus on anatomy, don't you?
Yeah, I didn't put anatomy queen.
Right, I'm trying to like big you up,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much.
I don't know, like, I feel like there must be a muscular thing as well, and why is that important? Like, obviously, like when you get old, like a lot of people fall when they get old and stuff, don't they? So balance is kind of important, and you should take over. You should take over, really.
Okay.
please rescue this.
Save me. So I think in terms of like because the workshop that we did was really mostly, and I did try to emphasize this, was really about your physical balancing, like literally standing on one leg. So it's not, even though you could do a whole workshop about mental balance, perhaps, or resilience and things like that, that wasn't what it was about. It was obviously about your physical balance. So what you were saying about like maybe the first time you started doing yoga and you felt quite like not very good at balancing in the poses, and then now you feel like perhaps something's got stronger or changed so that you do feel a lot more focused.
I'm not amazing at it. I'll just caveat that. Like, I'm not. I'm not going to join the circus anytime soon or anything.
Well, neither am I, so that's good. But like you just feel like perhaps you're a little bit better or whatever. But I think in terms of your balance, like what we went through in the class was like, starting at your feet and then kind of moving up the body or whatever. But your feet do obviously play a big part in your balance. And in yoga, we emphasize as much as we can without making people feel, obviously, uncomfortable. We don't want people to be scared and not come back. But there is a strong emphasis on do not wear socks. You should not be wearing socks when you're doing yoga. Unless you're absolutely freezing or you're outside or there's some real reason to be wearing socks, don't wear them. It's not good for your yoga practice. So you need to be able to feel with the skin on your feet. And if you're wearing socks, you can't. You can't feel that. You only feel pressure. So just practicing yoga in general without wearing socks on a regular basis will increase how well you balance just because you're more aware of your feet. It also means that your feet move and flex a lot. So like you say, if you move your hands around, you move your fingers, can you move your toes like that? Can you, are you quite, in general, quite dexterous with our feet? And obviously this does depend on the shape of your foot. I always joke I have very long toes, so I can emphasize all the things that I want you to do with your feet because my toes are really long. But assuming you have cute little, like, tiny toes that are more normal length, it might not be as obvious, but they should still be able to move and stuff. And I think that makes a really big difference to your balance. But obviously, everything affects your balance. So that's one of the things we went over in the class was, what was my list? I had a really long list. Anemia, medication, dehydration, overheating, low blood sugar, low blood pressure, migraines, ear infections, circulation. And then I wrote down low estrogen for women because when your estrogen is low, it affects your blood pressure and your circulation, which affects your balance. So it's kind of like a knock-on effect. And also, if you kind of listen to that, that highlights how much what you eat and what you drink affects your balance. And like, so basically everything affects your balance. But when you first start balancing, you wobble. So when you're not used to it, you'll wobble. So the ankle does that little wobble back and forth, and the leg and the foot wobbles, and maybe the foot starts to ache. So I always joke, like, it's not something you're used to. You might think like, oh, that hurts my foot. But as long as, obviously only you can tell if you've actually damaged something or if it's the muscle kind of working hard. But it's not every day we strengthen our feet. It's not something we tend to try and do regularly. So it feels weird because you're not trying to get bodybuilder feet. I don't know if that's a thing, but you know what I mean? We're not trying to like get muscular feet. It's not like, oh yeah, look at my muscular feet. So, so when we first start balancing and we wobble, the feet get stronger from it because we're wobbling and the feet have to work harder to stop. So the easier the balance is for you and the less wobble, the less your foot has to work. So I feel like there's a point where you find a muscular strength kind of balance in the foot. So when the foot isn't really strong enough to be holding your whole body on one foot, it might wobble and it might be like, oh, this is hard work. And then eventually it gets more and more kind of like, oh no, it's fine. I can just hold. It's fine. And then after a bit, maybe even gets weaker and you wobble again and then it gets strong again. And then it kind of is potential for it to do a bit of like a wave kind of thing where it's like strong, but not, I'm saying that it's very, very subtle. You might not even notice it. Once you can, once you're more comfortable in your more normal yoga balances or whatever. But it definitely is something, just like anything, practice makes it easier. The more you practice balancing, the easier it's going to be. And the more challenges you set yourself when you're balancing, the easier it's going to be. I had a teacher that used to dance around us when we were balancing. She used to make us hold. I'm serious.
It's like when you try and distract those guards at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She would never touch us. I don't know, the line you don't cross unless you're going to tell them you're going to is touching. So you don't touch when you're balancing because that will really throw people off. But moving around and kind of distracting and being silly and trying to throw off the balance, yeah, absolutely. Mm. And the other thing she used to do is she used to make us hold our palms facing up by the chest, and then she'd put a little tiny glass of water on your hands, and you had to balance and hold the little glass of water. Well, that's quite a good challenge as well.
Sounds like a game show, like.
It does, doesn't it? It's just mixing it up a bit, challenging the brain and the body and stuff. But then obviously there's, what I called it, that shrimp pose, and you had a good laugh and said I made it up.
You did make that up.
No, after class, one of the other students confirmed that is a Pilates move, so I didn't make it up.
Okay.
I don't know if it's called shrimp, though, in Pilates, but...
It just really felt like you just tried to pretend that it's something everybody did.
But how fun was that? Well, I'm just saying there's other ways to balance as well. Yeah. It's not all about feet. It's hands. You're balancing when you're in your side plank. And, you can, all those kind of things as well. So
I'm better at it because of the muscular thing in the feet then.
I would imagine.
But also, like, psychologically, it's like the brain doesn't go as quickly because you're not thinking about what you're doing as, maybe going quickly is the wrong thing, but you're not, like, I don't know if I said this before, but someone once said if a bird knew what it was doing, like, by flying and actually thought about it, they'd, like, be like, oh shit, and like probably fall out the sky because of like how precarious that is, like flying so high up. If you actually thought about it, you might think, oh good god, what's there's nothing to prevent me from instant death here if I get this wrong. But they're just actually doing it. And so if I'm in a balance and not worrying about it so much, which only comes with practice and confidence and knowing that you probably you are sort of reasonably passable at doing it, then that's a big element of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about that in my heads down workshop, because obviously being upside down is that's the big, I would say, and I think most people would agree, the worst thing about doing a heads down is the fear of falling. So if you could take that away, people will tend to give it a go. Like when you say, oh, we'll practice against a wall or whatever, and people go, oh yeah. I mean, I don't teach heads down against a wall. I've said that a million times. But but in general, that's usually the thing that stops people is they're worried about falling. They don't want to fall. They don't want to hurt themselves. And it's the same in any balance. It's just maybe a bit less obvious when you're stood up and you're only on one foot, because if you fall, quote unquote, all that means is you put a foot back down onto the floor. It's not like actually falling. It's very unlikely that you'll actually fall because you can just stop doing the yoga pose and then you're not falling. But yeah, your brain still interprets it a very similar way. You are still worried that you could fall because you're trying to balance. So absolutely, there's definitely a brain bit in there for sure. And then obviously, like I was saying, it's not just your feet that get strong, because we went over the fact that your transverse abdominals, your core muscles, play a very big part in your balance as well. So it's important that if you practice yoga and that includes a full body practice, then eventually everything gets stronger. So everything is more happy in a balance. Your legs, your glutes, your belly,
so
your back.
What's the point though? I know there's a point, but why would you say we need to learn to balance?
Well, I think there's a strong emphasis in yoga that if you can balance on the mat, then you're more likely to be able to find balance off of the mat. So applying that to your mental health and well-being and finding balance in your life, and whether that's having to say no to people so that you can be, have chill time, or whether that's having to say yes to things because you find it difficult to get out of the house, or whatever kind of extremes you want to kind of go for. It's supposed to kind of give you a bit more confidence and help with that. And then obviously balancing is important. Nobody wants to fall over on a physical level, Yeah,
because obviously when you're older, that's what a large percentage of hospital visits are people that fall, I suppose. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if that makes any difference, or
what?
I don't know,
if you are older and you think about falling and you think that is a real risk for me, and you go upstairs holding a rail and stuff like that, I would say that you should do something.
Like yoga.
Like yoga. Yeah. Or I think even in some, obviously I'm going to say yoga because I'm a yoga teacher, but I think
you should go to comedy nights. I think that would be
Well, to be honest, that might help. If that is part of your problem is in your head, it might actually help to get out of your head for a bit and listen to something funny. But at some leisure centers, they do something called active balance. So if you're worried about the cliche yoga style, like some people are, they don't want to go to a yoga class. Oh God, what am I getting myself into? There are other things out there that can help. And active balance is basically a class of balancing yoga poses. that just help you focus on balancing, but just leave all the other yoga stuff out of it. But I would say that if you're worried about balancing, you should practice balancing, because then you will less worry.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of like work-life balance and all that stuff that people always talk about, and like everything is like it's a bit Newtonian, isn't it? Like, you know, every reaction's got an equal and opposite reaction, hasn't it? So if you do too much in one thing, you suffer in another aspect of things, don't you? So like balancing, like from a psychological point of view, is quite important, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite tricky as well, isn't it?
Like if I want to like work really hard at being, you know, one of the 5 best comedians in Yorkshire, which I apparently am, according to a recent poll. Then I could just just put all my energy into that and stay up, 20 hours a day writing jokes, and like be quite happy to drive to Bournemouth and back just to get the stage time. And every day, like I'd go like anywhere, but I would pay for that elsewhere, wouldn't I? Like I would be knackered, and I'd lose money if I wasn't. Going
to be honest with you, that sounds like that would probably affect the quality of what you write and how you perform as well, because you'd be too tired.
Yeah, it's true.
So, that might be that's just too much all over, because that's just going to exhaust you.
Yeah, but anyway,
that's called burnout, and that's slightly different.
Okay, well, okay, so.
But yes, yeah, I would say that like
the way of looking at it would be like the universe getting me back. Like I'm trying to like break the laws of physics but I'll pay for it somewhere. You know.
I mean, the thing that I used to say a lot was like you have to find a balance, but you have to remember that a ton of feathers is a lot more feathers than a ton of bricks, because it's about density and weight and all of that. So like, just because you think, oh, I've spent half an hour resting, that means I can spend half an hour in a Zumba class, it's not the same. You might need 3 hours to rest after something, and especially if you're brand new to it. Or you might need days to let the muscles recover before you try again with strength training. Or maybe you've been really stressed and you think, oh, I'll have a day off because I'm really stressed, so I'm taking a day off work. And it didn't really help. Well, it's probably because you need a week off work, not a day. You know what I mean? It's like, sometimes people think a 50-50 split is even, but it's not. A lot of the time we need more. And sometimes that can be the other way around. If you sit a lot in your job and you sit a lot, you don't want 1 hour once a week. That's not enough. You need more. Or an hour a day is probably more realistic. And that doesn't mean you have to do it with yoga or with me or something like that. I just mean, do something. Get up, go for a long walk or whatever, Zumba or whatever your thing is. People like Zumba, I think.
I never done it.
Dance-ercise. I like how frozen you went. Just like, no, not going to dance-ercise.
I have to be on drugs to dance, I'm afraid. I don't think they let me in the Zumba class. I have to be like, he's drinking a lot of water, this guy. But I would say it's an equal and opposite reaction there. It makes it sound like it isn't.
But it could be a similar idea.
Well, yeah, but in terms of force and energy and stuff like that, I guess it would be equal, but it's just, like you say, with the weights and the feathers and the
the bricks, you might say they're equal, but it's gonna take so many feathers. Like it just wouldn't look equal.
They always say that, don't they? When you're a kid, they try and trick you and go, "What fool? You drop a ton of bricks and a ton of feathers off a building. What one lands first?" And then everyone goes, "Oh, the bricks." And then you go, "Ha ha ha! No, they weigh the same." But actually, they wouldn't. Like they would land differently, wouldn't they? Because they've got,
of course,
more area and stuff. So that's Like, I mean, it might be closer than you thought initially without thinking about it, but still. So what I learned from that is that adults are full of shit.
Basically,
don't trust adults.
Don't trust adults.
They don't know. They know only very slightly more than you.
Yeah, basically.
They're winging it, I'm afraid.
But I will say this, back on the idea of balance. I think there's a strong connection between saying imbalance is resilience, which I have mentioned recently in my June newsletter. That is an aspect of balance, being resilient to things and being able to respond. And I think you kind of can learn that through yoga as well. There's a theory that if you tax your body, so you put physical stress on your body, like say you do jumping jacks or you hold your chair pose or something that's like making your heart go boop, 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 boop. And you're getting tired. And then you also, at the same time as physically feeling exhausted or not exhausted, but physically, strained or whatever, you feel calm. Like, nothing's wrong. You're just playing around in the class. You feel like pretty chill or safe because you're in your house or, somewhere that you're familiar with. And then mentally you feel right. If you can do that regularly enough, you actually train the brain to feel calm in stressful situations. Because obviously when you're actually stressed, you will respond physically to that. And then your brain will respond to that. But there's a chance that you could override that slightly by realizing that it doesn't really matter if your body's, stressed and your heart's beating fast, because you felt like this before in a class, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. So, you can find that kind of bounce back or control or balance. Or
one of the meditations that comes up on the app I use is where he often asks you to think about something that you've done recently that you're embarrassed about, that you hate or something like that, and then try and isolate the physical feeling of that without thinking about what the actual, try and locate sort of what the discomfort that you're feeling. So you might feel like it in your stomach sort of a bit, and then just think about it as a physical manifestation of something rather than. And then I think what the phrase he uses is something like, you realise that the half-life of a negative emotion is actually really, really short. It's only when you keep so I don't know if that's a similar kind of thing in there.
Yeah, or like saying like, oh, when you feel embarrassed, maybe you feel it in your stomach. But then if you felt ill in your stomach and you weren't embarrassed, you would think, oh, what did I eat?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's kind of disconnecting the negativity from the physical reaction. And therefore, when you feel a little bit bad mentally, you could potentially like you're saying, bounce back from the physical reaction quicker because you're not necessarily associating the physical reaction with the emotional response. It's funny because have you done a one like that but for love then?
That's a very interesting question.
Well, it's just I remember that I have done, and I thought it was really good. But admittedly, when we did it, I was on a retreat, and the man who led the retreat said, "I do a meditation every morning at 3 a.m. and I'm going to open that up for you to attend if you want, if you're awake." So obviously, I was like, "Well, I'm not going to miss out on this." So I set my alarm and we went downstairs at 3 a.m. for this meditation. And it was that meditation. It was step-by-step processes to try and build the feeling of love and then to get rid of the source, which was really interesting. It was good.
Same principle, isn't it? Just a positive emotion rather than
I really like that. I did that for a long time regularly after that experience because I found it really like blissful, might be a nice way of putting it. Not like psychedelic, but just like, it's just like, I'm full of love and rainbows and I'm walking around.
I need to be on drugs for that. So.
But it was really nice. I remember thinking it was really nice. It made me a nicer person.
Yeah.
Not to everyone in every situation. Everyone's got the triggers, but.
So I did also think about like, how like people vote for, politics, right?
Yes, I know how politics work, and I know that you can vote for things.
No, so it's because I was also thinking, you look at the 1970s, there's a lot more like nationalised industries and stuff like that. Well, the nationalised industries started like after the war because they nationalised everything. So for some reason, like them being owned by what horrible monopolies was a bad thing, and everything got nationalised, and then that turned into like by the 70s that started going wrong. So then they privatised everything again, and now that is at a stage where like the nationalisation of some industries now is actually more popular because you look at things like the trains, and that seems like absolutely rampant, energy companies and stuff. And you think, well, maybe they need to be sort of nationalised. So everything's in a reaction to the thing to sort it out, but then it goes the other way, and then it's
almost like they're just wobbling back and forth,
pretty much,
rather than finding a nice balance in the middle.
So that's So in a way, what I'm saying is, isn't life like that? So
I don't know. If you wobble between two extremes, I think maybe you need to consider not. You know what though? I will say this. Diet's perfect example of that.
Right. Yeah.
So I suppose you could have that wobble back and forth in lots of things. That's not balance. That's nearly falling over.
Yeah. So, and you think learning to stand on one leg will help with that then, do you?
Maybe.
Yeah. Just bleeds into your
balance on the mat, balance off the mat.
Which is why the most balanced people in the world are probably acrobats and gymnasts, aren't they? They must be the most...
Oh, no, they are not the most balanced people. They're too far. You remember what you were saying about being exhausted and working 20 hours? Yeah, too far. Too far the other way.
Have you, since you started doing yoga, noticed you've been able to... You know when it's icy, do you not fall on the ice so much now? Because I was really bad at like staying upright. I mean, I haven't walked on ice for a long time.
Walked on ice?
Yeah, only when it's like, like when it snows and it doesn't get cleared and it gets all mushed down and stuff like that. I've had notable falling.
I've fallen
things.
On my butt.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, from ice. Like ice is just like it's another kettle of fish, really, isn't it?
They don't have yoga on ice, then, do they? Just to.
Could you imagine?
Sounds like a terrible Disney musical thing, isn't it? Yoga on ice. But if you had if you played like a video game, on ice is like hard mode for yoga, isn't it? I mean, literally, it'd be so difficult to do.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine trying to like hold a lunge and not just flop into a split or something really horrible?
Anything. I can't see anything working at all. Like your downward dog would just belly be flop. Belly flops, or constantly. So, yeah. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, we'll see you in 2 weeks. If you weren't sure, you can still find another episode in 2 weeks, because there will be an episode in 2 weeks, irrespective of your opinions on this and previous ones. But hopefully we'll see you then, so please stay subscribed, and if you want to help us out, tell your friends about the show. We'd love more people to know about it, and I've heard people be very explicit on this point, and maybe it works. If you really want to help, please give us a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts, because apparently that really, really helps you sort of up the charts and algorithms and all that stuff. But it's your call, obviously. I'm not if you're not ready to do that yet, I fully understand. It's potentially a bold thing to ask and for you to do. So, I get it. Right, have a lovely day.